In the previous video I said that I want to cut the bottom part of the rock, since we won't really rotate this rock by the y-axis inside CryEngine. We're only gonna rotate it on this axis. So by cutting the lower part, this part here, that will free us some extra UV space when we start making our textures. So first, before cutting the lower part, let me just, with the clip curve brush enabled still, just make a few quick insets on the lower part of the rock, something like this. Okay, so now I think the quickest way should be just selecting the mask rectangular brush, then just hold Ctrl and drag and select the lower part of the rock, not too much. Yeah, just make sure that you covered the whole part. Yeah, okay, that should be enough, I guess. So with this part masked, then go to polygroups, and from polygroups just click group masked. Now, since now this part is masked, and if you switch to the polyframe, you'll see that it just created a new polygroup from the masked area. So since now we have a new polygroup, all we need to do is go to Subtools, the split window, and from there you can just click groups split. Okay, so now if I click the servo mode, you see that this part of the rock is separated, so we can very easily just delete this part, we don't need it anymore. Okay, so now I think we can just make another quick cut with the clip curve brush, just to get rid of these triangles here. Yep, okay. So now let's continue with the sculpting process, and I'm gonna make again some quick cuts with the clip curve brush before I show you the main tool that we're gonna use for this rock. But for now, just I'll try to break up the silhouette a bit of the rock. Yeah, you can see that by just using this brush you can very easily cut a lot of corners and make some interesting shapes, and yeah, I think that for now we're kinda done with the main shape. So from now on I think that the main brushes that we're gonna use will be the clay brush, and the other brush is located in the light box. But yeah, I think we already put it here in the quick pick toolbar, the trim smooth border brush. So now this brush, it's really cool. For me, I get the main principle of its function. It gets the point of the surface when you clicked with it, and then it smooths and trims the whole area around it based on the angle of the surface that you clicked on. As you see now, when I click and drag, it trims the whole surface just facing this exact direction. So yeah, sometimes it's kind of unpredictable, but it can produce very cool results, especially when sculpting rocks. So let's first start with adding some volume with the clay brush. And now let's try this brush. I think the intensity we should lower it a bit, something like 70 is fine. Now, I think it's a good idea that at this point of the sculpting process we increase a bit the subdivision levels. Yeah, as you can see, with this brush you get this really nice sharp shapes on the rock, and with a little bit practice you can get some really interesting results. Now you see that when I click on the lower part, it starts to trim the area based on another angle, and that creates some really sharp, nice crevices. Later we will polish them a bit with the trim dynamic in the clay brush, so they don't look so clean and artificial. Yeah, and yeah, using this brush, be prepared to click and do a lot. Because yeah, as I said, sometimes it trims more than you actually like, but yeah, it's okay. Okay. For now I'm using a bigger brush size, but once we're done with the overall shape, we'll start polishing the medium-sized details. Now the main principle that I apply is that I just try to put different looking details on each side of the prop, so that will guarantee, yeah, as you can see now I'm just using with the Control Shift keys on the keyboard. I'm using the clip curve button as I'm using the trim border dynamic. Yeah, together they produce some really cool results. So yeah, just try to put different looking details on each side, but yeah, they should work well together, so that's why I recommend gathering some good photo references before you start. Now usually I'll pause and stop and look a lot more at these references, but since I'm sculpting this and we have like an hour or something to prepare the whole prop, I'll just rush a bit through it. Now let's move on to this side. Yeah, I think I'm gonna decrease a little bit the intensity as well as the brush size, and let's continue. Now see, when you click and start sculpting with this brush on the lower side of this crevice, you'll see that it will create this really well cut crevice in the lower part of the rock. And yeah, usually that would take at least 3 other brushes to complete, but with this brush it just creates it on the go. It's really fast, really efficient. It just takes some time getting used to. Okay, so this part of the rock is looking a little bit too squarish, so we're gonna break up this by... No, I think we're gonna add some volume instead of taking. Just switch to clay brush. Again, while sculpting, it's a good idea to regularly rotate, just to make sure that it's a good idea to imagine that you're a player in the game, and for example, if this rock is like 6 or 7 meters high, just imagine standing next to it inside the game and how all these details would actually look like. Would they look realistic? If you really go to some big rock in the forest, would it look like this? Okay. Okay, we'll accentuate this rock terrace by just cutting and insetting the lower part using the clip curve, something like this. Now when I scoped, I try to switch between very dense cracks and crevices like this here, with some pretty flattened areas like this one, because I noticed from a lot of rocks and cliffs that it's very common for some rocks to have a lot of chipped areas like this one that look very damaged, very cracked, and it's a good idea to have some parts just polished and trimmed, like from a wind, or I don't know. It looks really nice, and especially when we add later some specular map to the prop, you'll see that on this flattened surface it would look really nice when looked from certain angles. So yeah, just try to mix it up, switch between different kinds of damage that you're applying to the rock surface. That would really go a long way to the final result. Now see here, for example, we can add some variety by just cutting some parts. Okay, let's start working on this side of the rock. Now see here we have a lot of too much straight lines because of the clip curve brush, so let's start just breaking them up a bit, making them looking more organic.